Hi, welcome back. Part 2. Much time has passed since you last saw this, and it's green, like I said. It's been a few weeks because I'm sort of jumping in and out on this thing, and what you're seeing is many days work. I want to talk about piston rings and clearances and stuff. I didn't film it, I just jumped on it and did it. And TDC on the rock for doing your valve timing. If you do not have timing marks on your engine, and this works for petrol, diesel, multi-cylinder, single cylinder, overhead valve, overhead cam, and I'll explain in a minute how you do it. It probably wouldn't work for a high performance race engine with weird valve overlaps and valve durations, but certainly bog standard stuff it works well for. Now these old, this one's all right, one of them was slant cut. Some piston rings, if I bring it up, hopefully the camera will focus on it. I don't know whether it's picking it up, but I don't think it is. These rings are cut at a funny angle, and this is a standard gap, and people get in a real pickle over this. Basically, on slow revving engines like this, cast iron piston, cast iron bore, this does about 700 revs, so below 1000 RPM generally, this kind of setup. Old rule of thumb is 4 to 6 thou per inch of diameter of piston. This is a 3-inch piston. So 3/6 is 18 thou, gradually getting bigger as you go down each ring. All the rings are concentrated at the top of the piston on this. Sometimes you have an oil control at the bottom of the skirt, and pistons are tapered. They're wider at the bottom, at the skirt end, than they are at the top, the crown, by a few thou. If you measure one, you'll see, and they're meant to be like that. Obviously, check with your engine manufacturer if you're doing high performance multi-cylinders where there's more heat. These run quite cool, so you don't need so much clearance. If you're running boost, you need more clearance. And that's basically it. And people have fancy piston ring grinders and all the rest of it to cut the ends. I use a needle file, put it in a vise with some soft jaws. Been doing it for years like that, or even in your hand. You just need that clearance. And put the ring in the bore. I usually use a piston to push it down so it's square, and measure it with feeler gauges. 4 to 6 thou per inch of diameter, and you'll be absolutely fine on this sort of thing, but say check for other stuff. Now I'm going to zoom you in because I'll show you about this valve timing setup. I'm doing it this way for years, and it works. If I get that somewhere there, hopefully it'll come up. Right, TDC on the rock. If I rock this, right, this engine turns this way, that's in going down on the power stroke, right. Hopefully it's showing up. That's the exhaust valve coming out. Piston's coming up. Exhaust valve closes, and just as you get the top dead center, the inlet valve starts to open. And if you rock it very gently, you may not pick it up on the camera, so the crank is going over its sort of center point, you get the rock of the valve. So they both very slightly lift. If you engage your timing gear, so your cam to your crank, your timing chain, whatever it makes, overhead cam, set your cams and lock them in that position, so you get a piston at top dead center on the rock where both valves very slightly bump up and down. TDC on the rock, it'll work for bog standard engines that don't have any spurious valve timing or weird overlap or valve duration. And I've done this on multi-cylinders, V8s, inline 6s. If you do it number 1 cylinder, the rest, your bump sticks all one long length, it'll all work. And that will get you out of trouble. This had timing marks, and I still did it TDC on the rock, and when I looked afterwards, the timing marks lined up. So there you go, proof of the pudding is in the eating. So there you go, very simple and easy thing to do, and will get you out of a fix. And I've used it on car engines. I've had some of the banger boys come to me when they've had a head off a overhead cam. I don't know how to do the valve timing. They thought about that after they'd taken it apart, and I showed them the TDC on the rock trick, number 1 cylinder, bingo, they were up and running. So my next bit on this is to get as much of it back together as I can. Now, I'll zoom it out so you can see a bit more. When these engines were built originally, not just Fowlers, but stationary engines in general, they were built up, complete, unpainted, sent to test bay, tested, passed testing, quality control, then they went down the line to be painted, stick it up, created and sent out. I've built engines back up like that, but I like to do it this way where major doors can be taken off, and I've bought stainless steel nuts and washers so they don't rust or rust up, so that if I need to get back in here again, I never have, and all the engines I've ever done, I can without breaking the paint, but of course under original manufacture it didn't matter. But I made two new head studs for it. So that's that done, the others are okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a lot of this lob back together and we'll come back when we get to a bit more interesting part. As you can see, a few more bits have gone on. I'm still waiting for some stainless steel fasteners I forgot to order, but I thought, how do you do your ignition timing? We've done our valve timing. Where do you set your points opening to give you the spark at the right time? Quite often there's a lightning strike type symbol on the flywheel. If it's still there after all these years, this is rusted off. Long gone. So how do you do it? My go-to is I set the piston at top dead center compression stroke, so it should have fired by now because the piston's about to go down. And I'll bring this one up. It's another Wico mag. I'll bring it up so hopefully you can see. I'm hoping this is going to pick this up. I'll bring it up close enough. Let's get the thing to focus. I don't know whether you're going to be able to see this, but basically when you turn this round, there's a point where the cam opens the points. It just starts to open, and where it just starts to open is where you're going to get ignition. So what I've done over the years, when I don't know where my timing should be, I set it so as it opens and opens, it plateaus out to a point where that's it, maximum opening, and it stays at that point as it goes round till the points close again. So what I do, I set the points so we've gone past just opening to that point where it plateaus out, where they're a maximum opening at TDC. Then when you wind it back, you'll notice that as the position where your points are just open, which is where you'll get your spark, it should be about 5 degrees-ish before TDC. Now these engines need to be slightly before top dead center. If they're after, they run lethargically, they run hot. But if you have it too far advanced, of course, it'll pull the starting handle out of your hand and might break your wrist. Not a good day out. So somewhere around there, it's a good starting point, and to be fair, it's never failed me. And on this one, that's where my crank is. My piston's not quite at TDC, and I know those points are just opening, so it's about to spark at this point. And then obviously the weight of the flywheel will carry it over, and off we go. You can always adjust it. This one doesn't have an impact or impulse on the back. This mag has an impulse. This is a spring-loaded device that it works centrifugally. There's an arm pops out and jams on that spacer below a certain RPM, and as it goes round, the body knocks the spacer out, and then this flicks, and it gives you speeds up the mag for that initial start low RPM. But of course this doesn't have that. It's just a gear on the end of the shaft, and you've got to sort of give it a bit of welly to get the RPM up to get it to spark. So on a cold winter's day, that's a preferred option with the impulse. So that's done. That is close enough, and it will probably run perfectly like that. We'll find out shortly, because we're going to get to a point where this is going to be running in this video. The other thing I want to talk about was spring-loaded crankcase breathers. People make a right mess of this. A lot of engines have this bit. What it looks like is that kind of sort of. And in there is a flat disc that sits in there, and a spring on the top. It's just a light spring. Now the spring is long gone, rusted away. So I found out in my come in handy box of springs. I'm waiting for some screws to come for this, because again I forgot to order them. But I can hear, probably won't pick up on a microphone, that flap is shutting as I stop breathing. Now the idea of this is that as your piston goes down, it exhausts any crankcase gases out of this breather. The moment it changes direction and goes back up, this shuts, and it will then draw air in via your cranks shaft openings here, because this has got felt seals. A lot of them don't have even that. They have absolutely nothing. If you don't have that working breather, your crankcase pressure, a lot of people block them off, will force the oil out your crank bearings, and then of course hits a crank, comes out here, hits a flywheel, and it sprays everywhere. It makes a right mess. And I've tried to explain on a rally field over the years what that's for on various engines, on single cylinders anyway, and I get people look at me like I'm talking Swahili. But without that, it will guarantee to leak oil out your crank seals. Spark plugs, whatever you do with these engines, spark plugs will not last. You can put an 18mm plug in this, brand new, and it's not because they're poor quality or anything. Basically it would appear that back in the early 70s, manufacturers stopped glazing the end of the very tip of the ceramic in your spark plug. I'll get that to focus. That'd be in there. They don't glaze it. Now, what happens is the chemicals in modern unleaded fuel don't burn at the lower temperatures that these engines run at, and they break down the insulation in your spark plug, and it will misfire. It will cut out. Obviously, a single cylinder will just stop. And you can fiddle about with it, wire brush it, run for a bit. It's an absolute pain in the neck. And unfortunately, 18mm spark plugs is brand new D16. Nothing wrong with the plug. I'm not dissing Champion or anything. It doesn't matter what you use. They will not last any more than this 14mm plug will last in one of these engines on a rally field. But this 14mm plug, and non-resistive, is like a Champion N9Y type affair. This is actually a AccuSpark AC9C non-resistive tri-electrode. Doesn't have to be tri-electrode. Will last the same amount of time, but these are much cheaper. Not because it's an AccuSpark, but 14mm non-resistive plugs are less than half the price of modern 18mm plugs. And what I use is one of these to overcome the problem. This is an M18 to 18mm to 14mm spark plug adapter. I used to make my own years ago, and I get a crush washer to go on there to seal it up. I get these from the Green Spark Plug Company now. It's not worth me making them out of a bit of brass stock. Literally, you put that in, and of course this engine would have had a short reach plug. I'll get this out of here, because it's sat around a while. I'll show you what I mean. The original 18mm is shorter than the 14mm long reach, but because you put that brass adapter in there and the sealing washer, it holds the plug out so you can use this and it doesn't hit the piston. I've not come across one that does. A check, don't just mindlessly swing it over. Check first, just bring it over gently and make sure it doesn't come to a dead stop or bump over something and you've squashed the end of your plug or damaged your piston. But in all the years I've been doing this, I found this is by far the most sensible way of overcoming the short-lived spark plug problem that all these stationary engines seem to suffer nowadays. Use the adapter, long reach 14mm plug, cheapest chips. You can buy a box of 10 for like 20 quid, 25 quid, something like that. Last time I bought a box of 10. And that'll see your rally season depending on what you're doing, and probably a couple of rally seasons. They generally last a few shows before they start to misfire. You suddenly notice the rhythmic running is the odd pop now and again, and then it's gone. So you just bung on the plug and away it goes. And you can have a cracking great big spark on the plug sat on the outside of the engine swinging it over, because it's a lot easier to get it to spark in atmospheric conditions rather than under the pressure of combustion conditions in the engine. So you think, oh well, that's all right, that's going to work. Bin it. So do this. It's just a recommendation, you don't have to, but it's got me out of a fix. And I've been doing it like this for years and years and years. Thought you might like to see this. That there, if it will focus, stupid thing, come here, there, that there is what's left of a nut. Like, how many years does it take for the rain to erode that away? It's actually, you probably can't see it on the camera, but it's just gone through to the inner thread. But I undid that with a 6-sided socket. It's that nut there. It was exposed to the elements. That holds the spindle which the governor weights spin round on. I had managed to get a new one. It's British standard, fine, BSF. I had to machine a bit off the bottom of the nut because it was too tall compared to the original to get the castellated part to line up with the hole in the bolt there. But yeah, I find that incredible. This is probably the reason this engine was scrapped and the mag was pulled off with a tyre lever or something similar, because they took one look at that and thought, oh, that would be locked up solid, that would be no good. And the engine wasn't actually seized when I got it. But I thought, yeah, how long does it take for a nut that size to end up to the point it's corroded away right through? There's actually daylight I can see through to the inner thread. And yeah, it's a few more years outside and that would have been the end of that, never got it apart. Now, oil, that's a serious bone of contention on a rally field. You see that little dipper, if I can get a torch on it there. There it is there on the bottom of the crank. That dips in your oil, that's why it's called a dipper. I'll try and get in a bit closer in a minute and splash your oil around. Let me see if I can get in a wee bit closer so you can see it a bit better. And that will pick up And that's it. That's all that lubes your engine. As that goes down, it splashes the oil around in that trough. Now, if your oil level is not there at the top and your engine is tipped over at the rally field, you run a risk of that dipper not getting in that oil and then not lubing your engine. And this, like I know, it's got roller bearing mains, but the big end is still white metal. It won't last very long because it is only splash lube. It splashes up and there's 2 holes in the top of the conrod where the oil goes in, and that is it. That's all that lubes it. Now if I pull out a bit, we come up here. What oil do we use? Well, pretty much anything within reason. You don't have to use this brand, but this is Mixed Fleet 1030, because we run diesel. We've got the old Transit and other petrol vehicles. Obviously we use motorcycle oil in the motorcycles, and change it regularly. There will be people who will say you must use SA30, you must use 2050. Anything's better than what was around when these things were built, and change it regularly is a huge benefit, but you do need it at the right level and on the level. I've seen a few engines seize up on rally fields where they're sat kitty wonkers, and one of the mains doesn't get any oil if it's white metal mains like a Lister A or a Lister B, etc. And it then overheats and grabs and seizes your engine up, which can be fairly spectacular at speed. So quick one on oil there. Moment of truth, will it start? I have no idea. What will it do when it starts? No idea. Hopefully run okay. I know a lot of people are going to moan because it's got a car alternator on it, but it's the easiest way to load it up. A dynamo is more expensive. You use like 60 quid, plug it in and it works. We've got to have a separate reg box for a dynamo. A lot of people get confused. And being 12 volts, if you're doing a show or a rally, if it rains and gets wet, it's not going to do any harm. When nothing will short out, nobody get electrocuted. And you don't need a battery on all the time. You just need a battery to strike up the regulator and the alternator once it's running. It doesn't need the battery. So I don't know whether this is going to start without needing a bit of petrol down a plug hole, or what it's going to do, or anything. So we'll just give it a go and see if this old man can swing it. Because remember I said earlier on, this doesn't have an impulse start. So got to hold the choke down and swing. I'm going to stick some petrol down the plug hole, I think. Right, let's see if this will do it. No idea. I'm just guessing at the moment. Well, spat back, so we've got a spark. Camera battery went flat. I just swung it over and it just went. I think we might have an intermittent spark due to I've got a capacitor in there instead of the right condenser, because it's all I've got at the moment. I'm so slow, isn't it? Try and do this on your own, because it wouldn't even fire on starting fluid. So all of a sudden I just swung it and it bit and fired straight up and picked up lovely. So I think with the right condenser we'll get a better spark, and then it should be all right. But it runs. We're not disappearing in a cloud of blue smoke. I'll get my rev counter and see what it's spinning up at. We'll energise this. Right, after much fiddling about, I think one of my leads is no good. Let's just see. It should. Maybe the battery's just dead as well. Who knows? Oh, that wire's not very good either. You can credit that. Right. We will get there. Then the important thing is the engine's running lovely. Well, I do think we have a weak spark, so negative. Onto negative. So this panel has been sat in the container for a couple of years, so it may be corroded up. 12 volts. There you go. Engine barely notices it, and that's about 210 watts coming out of that. I'll get you off of there and bring you around so you can see what's going on. And I'm having terrible trouble with my camera. For some unknown reason, it keeps wanting to stop recording. Can't work out why. Along with, I think we've got ignition trouble. I think the capacitor I've used is the wrong value, I know it is. And we're not getting a decent enough spark. And it just suddenly bit. But it's running really nice. We haven't got a horrible load of oil and snot coming out of the exhaust, which is good. We're pulling about 230 watts. Running at a steady speed other than the odd pop and bang now and again. We do have a couple of little fuel leaks to sort out. One on the bottom of the tap there, there's a very slight drip. And on the top of the banjo there seems to be a pinhole, which can be soldered up. But if all that really is wrong is that, and it needs a correct condenser in the mag, which we knew it needed anyway, the condensers dry out, they don't last forever, the best will in the world, and unfortunately some of these modern condensers aren't very good either, but I've ordered the right one, so hopefully that will sort that out. And obviously a flat battery and a dud lead when we were trying to energise it, that battery's not connected. Once you strike them up, they work. So I'm going to call this it while the camera's still recording for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and learned something useful bits and bobs along the way, and I'll say thanks for watching and we'll see you in the next one.